ahead and get started. So before the debate, I do want to make a comparison between Kamala Harris's new platform and Jill Stein's platform. I went through Kamala's platform. I'd already seen Jill's before, and we've gone over that on the show. But some people are calling foul play. Foul play. Let's dive into that. Tamanisha comes in with the bam. Harris has released an issues section on her website. And noticeably, Harris's policies aren't that distinct from Trump's. These comparisons for readers to make are easy since she links the 2025 agenda under each issue area that are mostly copied and pasted from Biden's website. So that was something I noticed when I was going through this. I'm like, why does this sound familiar to me? I'm like, didn't I see this already? Yeah, just copying and pasting from Biden's, website that he had. Tamanisha goes on to say the same tough on borders nonsense, same tough on crime, fund police and give them training nonsense, positions Israel as the U.S. only ally against China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran, and will give people $25K greater than 3% for home down payments as the housing market is trash. Notably, the majority of the issues read as rhetoric since none of these alleged policy responses that Harris will have are actually drafted ones, except the one on immigration, since it's the same bipartisan bill Democrats have been saying they will pass for almost a decade now. It's a bloated site to say the campaign has posted issues, but that's it. The only real policies listed are Republican or bipartisan ones, since Democrats pretend there's a distinction between the two parties. This is laughable and reads how the majority of issues do. So I'm going to show you myself. Let's get into this platform that Kamala Harris now has. So we're going to start off here with build an opportunity economy and lower costs for families. So check this out, fam. Watch this. Cut taxes for middle class families. All right. So let's dive into this part here. I want to go into what she plans to do. Unlike Donald Trump, Harris and Governor Walz are committed to ensuring no one earning less than $400,000 a year will pay more in taxes. They believe that we need to chart a new way forward by both making our tax system fair and prioritizing investment and innovation. They will ensure the wealthiest Americans and the largest corporations pay their fair share so we can take action to build up the middle class while reducing the deficit. This includes, check this out, y'all. This includes rolling back Trump's tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. So I have a question. Why wasn't that done already under the Biden-Harris administration? A while back, I told you guys that Joe Biden continued some of Donald Trump's tax policies. Why wasn't this already done? Let's continue. They're talking about adding a billionaire minimum tax, quadrupling the tax on stock buybacks, and other reforms to ensure the very wealthy are playing by the same rules as the middle class. Under her plan, the tax rate on long-term capital gains for those earning $1 million or more a year or more will be 28%, because when the government encourages investment, it leads to broad-based economic growth, et cetera, et cetera. So again, something that could have already happened under the Biden-Harris administration. That's the thing that's funny about this, is that people are actually pretending like Kamala Harris is not a part of the current administration, and she is. And for those who sit up there and tell me, well, she's vice president, so it's not like she can make these decisions, you're going to see in some of these other policies, she already has implemented and made some decisions. I can also point to someone like Dick Cheney, who was probably one of the most powerful vice presidents, as long as I can remember, who made quite a bit of decisions. So don't fall for that. Now, let's go to this one here. Make rent more affordable and home ownership more attainable. So this goes into her plan to help people be able to purchase homes. So she talks about building more homes. She says they want to build 3 million more rental units and homes that are affordable to end the national housing supply crisis in her first term. And she will cut the red tape to make sure we're building more housing faster and penalize firms that hoard available homes to drive up prices for local home buyers. Okay, so we need to start dropping names. One of those companies is BlackRock. And we all know that Kamala Harris has former BlackRock executives that she has brought on to participate, to be a part of her team. So is she really going to push back against those people since she brought them? I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, let's get to the 25,000. As more new homes are built and affordable housing supply increases, Vice President Harris will provide first-time home buyers with up to 25,000 for their down payments, with more generous support for first-generation homeowners. Anybody notice that this rhetoric has changed twice now? So when she first announced this, she said it will be $25,000 towards a down payment if you're a first-time home buyer or first-generation home buyer, right? Then she had to come back and correct that. And she stated that it's actually going to be a $25,000 tax credit. Now they're saying it's up to $25,000. How did it go from $25,000 to no, it's a $25,000 tax credit to no, it's up to $25,000 for a down payment? Anybody noticing this? They already like changing things, changing the plan, changing the rhetoric. Like, what do you mean? Make up your mind. Do you trust this? Then there's the question of first-time home buyers and first-generation home buyers. And I said before, when we talk about having an agenda that is actually going to benefit Black voters as well, because again, like I said, Black voters are often overlooked by politicians when they're thinking of policy platform. I'm thinking about all the Black people that lost their homes during the '08 housing crisis. Those are people that were home owners. So they wouldn't qualify under this program because they wouldn't be a first generation homeowner and they wouldn't be a first time homeowner. Does that make sense? So why are we not putting something in place to help those people that were preyed on by predatory lenders and lost their homes, and Barack Obama chose to bail out Wall Street instead of those people? Why isn't there anything to help them? We're talking about generational wealth that was just wiped out. And I said before, when you look at the Black community, we lost a lot of wealth under Barack Obama's presidency because of his economic policies. Now, that's not an opinion. That's something that you can look up the data for and see it for yourself. And we have to be honest about that. What do you mean by first generation? Because I was a first-time home buyer, right? And first-generation home buyer? No, because my parents were home buyers. So some people are also asking, does that include people who have migrated to the country? Would they fall under that? I don't know. We don't know. But you're noticing that they're already starting to change the language, right? Check out this one. Grow small businesses and invest in entrepreneurs, which I think that's a good idea. Yes, I'm all for people growing small businesses. A lot of small businesses closed during the pandemic, particularly in Boston. A lot of the businesses that closed here during the pandemic were Black businesses. That's just a reality. Now, she goes on to say, as part of the opportunity economy agenda, their plan is to help small businesses and entrepreneurs innovate and grow. It says she has an ambitious goal of 25 million new business applications by the end of the first term, over 10 million more than Trump saw during his term. To help achieve this, she will expand the startup expense tax deduction for new businesses from $5,000 to $50,000 and take on the everyday obstacles and red tape that can make it harder to grow a small business. So one of those things that I think can help people start a small business is if they don't have to pay taxes on it for the first 10 years. And honestly, I've spoken to people in person who own small businesses, and I asked them, like, we talked to people at the nail salon, okay? How do you guys do this? I asked this years ago. How do you do this? Like, how do you get to open a nail salon? Like, if you immigrated here and you're able to just, how do you do this? And you know what I was told? I was told by the owner of that nail salon that because he immigrated to the US, he didn't have to pay taxes on the business for the first 10 years. Okay. I say, let everybody do that. Give it to everybody. Let everybody have that and see how many small businesses grow, right? Here's another one. Take on bad actors and bring down costs. So it goes over what she did as attorney general, and she says she went after the big banks. Of course, it leaves out that she did not prosecute Steve Mnuchin, and she didn't prosecute him because he donated money to her campaign. So just think about that, right? But it goes on to say here, they want to go after corporations that jack up prices and undermine the competition that allows all businesses to thrive while keeping prices low for consumers. She will go after bad actors who exploit an emergency to rip off consumers by calling for the first ever federal ban on corporate price gouging on food and groceries, which will build on the anti-price gouging statutes already in place in 37 states. Now, I know a lot of people have been pushing back on, banning corporate price gouging, but this has been done before, maybe not to this extent, but under President Nixon, he put a ban on price gouging. Now, I'm going to warn you, if you look up articles about this, they're going to say, was this a good idea? Because it actually hurt the economy. It caused a lot of inflation. I'll have to honestly have a conversation with an economist about that. But it has been done before. So a lot of people are pushing back and they're like, no, nobody's done this. Yes, Richard Nixon did do this. So just keep that in mind. However, does that fix the overall problem? No, because the overall problem is capitalism. We live in a capitalist society. You wouldn't have to put a federal ban on these corporations and these companies if we didn't live in this capitalist society. And even if you put the ban on them, they'll try to find a way to get that money back in other ways. And my question is, what else will they do in return to try to make that money? So we're talking about a huge economic situation here. I think Professor Richard Wolff will probably have a better way to fix this problem because he's really big on, prices and the economy, et cetera. But that's one of the things that she has listed as well. It also mentions that she's going to take on big pharma to lower drug prices and cap insulin costs, not just for seniors, but for all Americans. So under the Biden-Harris administration, they have done this, but it's for seniors. So they want to do it for everyone. However, does this fix the overall problem of the healthcare system in this country? No, it doesn't. You know what would fix that? Universal healthcare. The reality is, if you reduce, you cut the cost of the drug prices, et cetera, that's good. But the reality is those pharmaceutical companies will find a way to make that money in other means, whether it's increasing the price on other forms of medicine or whatever, whether they're increasing like the insurance rates, they'll find a way to get that money back. So the best thing that you can do, and to make sure that everyone in this country has health care, is a universal healthcare system. If we want to really go for the jugular here, I would say something similar to what they have in the UK, a national healthcare system where you don't have to worry about that. When you go to the doctor, you don't have to worry. If you have a baby, raise your hand in the chat if you've had a baby. If you had a baby, you went into labor in a hospital in the United States, put the number 1 in the chat. You know how much it costs to physically have a baby in a hospital here in the United States? So that's another thing. It's just all these people, they're like, we need to have more babies. People aren't having kids. We got to have more babies. People aren't having kids. Yeah, you're going to pay these hospital bills? I see a lot of people putting up number 1s in the chat. So just think about that. Okay. So that's the ultimate thing. I think they're putting a Band-Aid on the situation, strengthening and bringing down the cost of healthcare. So this goes kind of like an extension to the big pharma thing. It says she will make affordable healthcare a right, not a privilege, by expanding and strengthening the Affordable Care Act. So didn't they promise that already? Didn't the Biden-Harris administration promise they were going to do that? And then Biden won, and then all of a sudden is like, he just stopped talking about expanding Obamacare. Like, it was just kind of weird. Like, just stop talking about it. I don't know. But again, this still is not solving the root issue, because this is just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. Expanding Obamacare, yeah, that's a plus from where it is now, but everybody is still not going to have healthcare in this country. They keep trying to put Band-Aids on these wounds instead of healing the wound. You put a Band-Aid on a wound and eventually the Band-Aid gets wet. You have to take a shower. So you have to take the Band-Aid off. You have to put another Band-Aid on top of it, of that wound. Why not just heal the wound? So all of this red tape, like, this is ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. This country has plenty of money, right? And so they can do more than this. I'm trying to go through this rather quickly. Protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. So that's something that she wants to do as well. She will ensure to fight and make sure that Americans can count on those benefits. Again, I thought Joe Biden, weren't they supposed to do this already? Like, so that's a repeat from Biden. Support American innovation and workers. So it says here that Biden and Harris helped pass the landmark legislation, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the American Rescue Plan that has supported more than 60,000 infrastructure projects. It spurred more than $900 billion in private sector investments and doubled investments in construction and new manufacturing facilities. Okay, that's all great. Now, it goes on to say here, it says, we come down here, sorry, what she plans to do. Because they talk about what her and Biden did. It says that she is going to build on the administration's progress to ensure American industries and workers thrive. It says here she will continue to support American leadership in semiconductors, clean energy, AI, and other cutting edge industries in the future. Let's pause for a second. How is she going to be supporting clean energy? And she's already told you guys multiple times she no longer supports a ban on fracking. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality. I mean, I don't wait for it. You haven't seen the crazy part yet. She's going to sign landmark pro-union legislation, including the PRO Act to support workers to choose to organize and bargain, and the Public Service Freedom and Negotiate Act to make the freedom for public service workers to form unions the law of the land. Again, I'm all for unions. So I'm not against people having the ability to form a union. However, I will say, I think the end game should be worker cooperatives, because when you build a worker cooperative, you own a piece of the company. I've interviewed a number of union members on the show, and a number of times they've told me where union leadership or union management have overlooked their demands and their needs and their wants, and they have decided to just go against what the members have voted on. In fact, the railroad workers came on to talk about that. So this is why I push more for worker co-ops. Now, here's the crazy part. Check this out, fam. She'll fight to raise the minimum wage. She will fight to raise the minimum wage. Raise it to what? There's no dollar amount. I mean, even Bernie Sanders gave you the blueprint of the $15, which that's not even enough today to adjust for inflation. But even Bernie Sanders gave you a starting point. Okay. So raise it to what? I need dollar amounts, honey. You got to give me some figures. I mean, right now, what is $7.25 an hour? Something like that. I mean, you don't give me a number. They could raise it to $8.50 an hour. So what do you want? What? Okay. It's vague. It's vague. Let's go on. Provide a pathway to the middle class through quality and affordable education. So she says she's going to fight to help parents to afford high quality childcare and preschool for their children. Strengthen public education and training as a pathway to the middle class. And she'll continue working to end unreasonable burden of student loan debt and fight to make higher education more affordable so that college can be a ticket to the middle class. Again, notice this middle class. There's a lot of focus on the middle class. And I told you that's where they seem to be investing their energy, right? What about people who are part of the working poor? What about people who are, living in poverty? So it seems like these people are just overlooked multiple times. So some of these things, to date, it says that she helped deliver the largest investment in public education in American history, provided nearly $170 billion in student debt relief for almost 5 million borrowers, and deliver record investments for HBCUs, tribal colleges, Hispanic serving institutions, and other minority serving institutions. And then it goes on to talk about increasing the maximum for the Pell Grant Award by $900, et cetera. Again, those aren't bad things. However, it's a Band-Aid. So what could be done here? Number one, when we talk about education, we need to make sure we're talking about K through 12 as well. And we're talking about the public school education. One of the things that needs to go, you got to stop using property taxes to fund and resource public schools in this country for K through 12. People shouldn't have a cheapened education because of their zip code, because kids can't help where they are born. And it does happen. I've worked in the education system for over a decade. I see the difference between a school that's in Newton, Massachusetts, and a school that's in Roxbury. This is all based on property taxes. So we need to talk about that. Education needs to be equal across the board. So there's that. The other thing I want to bring up, it's great that she was able to get money invested into HBCUs and all these different colleges, et cetera. But the reality is, at the end of the day, if there isn't any restriction put on these universities, stopping them from increasing the tuition to a point where people just can't afford it anymore, those universities will continue to increase tuition. And the more they do that, the more student loans people are going to have to take out to attend those colleges. So you got to hit the colleges in the pocket. And I've been saying this for a long time. I'm pretty sure some of the faculty members I worked with would not like to hear me say this, but it's the reality. These colleges are a business. They're going to find a way to make that money somehow. So just keep that in mind. So if you don't put a restriction on the universities, people are still going to have to take out a lot of student loan debt. So we need to have like these real conversations here. Invest in affordable childcare and long-term care. We need to have universal childcare in this country. Again, it says she's going to fight to lower the cost. And what does that mean? Lower it by how much? If you live in Boston, at one point, I've double checked this. At one point, right before the pandemic, to send your kid to daycare in Boston, you're looking at like $3,000 a month per child. Per child. My parents didn't send me to daycare. My mom was able to stay home with me until I turned 5. And then I went to kindergarten, and then my mom went back to work. I don't know anyone that can afford to do that today. Everybody I know has to have 2 incomes. So there's that. Universal. Other countries have this. Some of our allies have this. They have universal childcare. Lower energy costs and tackle the climate crisis. Now, this is a joke because it says here, she will unite Americans and tackle the climate crisis as she builds on historic work, advancing environmental justice, protecting public lands and public health, and increase resilience to climate disasters. Okay, we're not going to go into all this, but I'm going to tell you how this is bullshit. Because the reality is, she just told you guys in her interview with Dana Bash, she no longer supports a ban on fracking. Now, the Biden administration approved the drilling for the Willow Project, which is on indigenous land. So how are you going to protect those communities that are affected by environmental pollution, and you're gaslighting or basically green lighting these projects that are on indigenous land? Flint still has dirty water, boo. Flint still has dirty water. These are things that have already been done. What she's done under each one is she's put up Trump's Project 2025 agenda. Now, we've said that this is the Heritage Foundation, but they're still saying this is Trump's agenda, right? The Heritage Foundation has put out a project such and such as long as I can remember. So she's saying that basically he wants to eliminate Department of Education. He wants to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, all those types of things. So she's making the comparison between herself and for Donald Trump. Now, fundamental freedoms. Let's get into this one. Restore and protect reproductive freedoms. So she talks about here how Donald Trump picked those Supreme Court justices and they overturned Roe v. Wade, et cetera. And she's saying here that she will never allow a national abortion ban to become law. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, she will sign it. So this part is important, people, because I want you to understand what the president can do and what they cannot do. One thing I will say, at least they did put it here, that Congress has to pass the bill, which means that Democrats will have to retake the House and the Senate, and then it'll be brought to her desk and then she can sign it. So I will say it's good that they put that there, because I don't want people to just assume that like this is something she can just do by executive order, not with this particular situation. So there's that. And I think we all knew that she supported women's right to choose. Protect civil rights and freedom. So this is about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. So she talks about that, and she says her administration will continue to protect Americans from discrimination, building on her work to secure $2 billion in funding for offices of civil rights across the federal government. Okay, what does that mean? Because I have to say this, a lot of money goes into these offices for civil rights, or, you know, let's have inclusive conversations, like all of those types of things. But that doesn't stop discrimination. That doesn't stop. Look, Tyreek Hill was just slammed to the ground by the police in Miami, Florida. And Tyreek Hill is a professional athlete. He was on his way to the game. So all this money that's going into these different offices, Office of Civil Rights and Office of, you know, African American Study, Justice, this and all that, sending money to the NAACP, which has basically become a corporate organization protecting corporations at this point. None of this is actually helping and improving what it is like to be discriminated against in this country based on race or gender alone. So as long as you keep the current systems in place that allow that discrimination to happen, that's not going to change. People have to understand this. You know, I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to gaslight you with this. So of course she posts Donald Trump's 2025 and talked about how he overturned Roe and he demonized LGBTQ and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Boy, I tell you, we almost done. Ensure justice and safety for all. Make sure communities are safer from gun violence and crime. So this is not that much different from Donald Trump's agenda when it comes to gun violence and crime. Both of them are pro-police, and both of them keep talking about the crime issue. So she's not that much different when it comes to this, except for the fact that it says, I think she's going to try to implement gun restrictions, more gun restrictions. It says here that she talked about what she delivered. I want to get to this. She will make sure that she fights so that Americans have the freedom to live safe from gun violence in schools, communities, and places of worship. She'll ban assault weapons and high capacity magazines, require universal background checks, and support red flag laws that keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. So listen to this, folks. Don't sleep on this. She will also continue to invest in funding law enforcement. What did I tell you? So she's going to continue. She's going to give money to the police, just like Biden gave money to the police, just like Trump gave money to the police. So when it comes to policing, both of these people, Trump and Kamala, are pro-police. Pro-police. Now, we're going to jump forward here. Immigration. Secure our borders and fix our broken immigration system. So let me just jump to what she wants to do here. As president, she will bring back the bipartisan border security bill and sign it into law. At the same time, she knows that our immigration system is broken and needs comprehensive reform that includes stronger border security and an earned pathway to citizenship. How is that any different from what Trump wants to do with the border? Kamala Harris moved to the right on the border. I'm not saying they're exactly alike. They're not exactly alike. But for the people that were calling Kamala Harris progressive, she's not progressive. Okay. All right. Let's go down here. Tackle the opioid and fentanyl crisis. I think this is another one that Donald Trump also, I think they share agreement here. It says she will sign the bipartisan border bill that will fund detection technology to intercept even more illicit drugs, and she'll keep fighting to end the opioid epidemic. So I think they agree there as well. ensure no one is above the law. So it says here, she's going to fight to ensure that no former president has immunity for crimes committed while in the White House. She will also support common sense Supreme Court reforms. So they differ there, obviously. Now, here's the last one. This is where we get into foreign policy. Hold on to your seats, honey buns. Let's just get to it. Stand with our allies, stand up to dictators, and lead the world stage. Oh, Lord. Here it goes. Vice President Harris has been a tireless and effective diplomat on the world stage. So it talks about all the leaders that she met with, and I want to highlight what she wants to do here. Kamala Harris will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to protect U.S. forces and interests from Iran and Iran-backed terrorist groups. She will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself. Everybody hear that. She will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and she will always ensure that Israel has the ability to defend itself. So, having said that, for the 100th time, she is not going to restrict or ban sending weapons to Israel. Does everybody understand that? Are we all clear? We all here? So her and Donald Trump are the same when it comes to sending weapons and aid to Israel. Everybody get that? The co-founders of the Uncommitted campaign, do you get that? Can we stop it with the, can I push her left? Can we push her on this issue? Stop it. This woman is never going to go against what Israel wants. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been selected to be the nominee. Let's continue. It goes on to say here, she and President Biden are working to end the war in Gaza such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, and the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. She and President Biden are working around the clock to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire done. So the same BS that we've been hearing over and over again, and I told you again, notice how they only mention Gaza. They don't mention the West Bank. An American woman was just killed in the West Bank by the IDF. They shot her in the head. They're not mentioning the West Bank because you can't use the excuse, well, we got to let Israel steal people's homes and shoot Americans in the head because they have a right to defend itself. Hamas is not in the West Bank. Kamala Harris's policy when it comes to Israel is not going to be different than Joe Biden. Does everybody get that? Her and Donald Trump are in agreement there. So again, I'm showing you how they are alike. And then invest in America's sources of strength. That one's kind of blah, blah, blah. Same thing with support the veterans. She's going to try to, help veterans or end veteran homelessness. I call BS. Again, that could be done right now. There's a lot of homeless vets. Collins said it well. At this point, Kamala Harris was better off not putting up a policy page on her website. If she is not making herself politically stand out from Joe Biden, why even bother? Again, how many differences did you see? This is Joe Biden's campaign all over again. However, there is someone else who has a better platform. And we're not going to go through everything because I've done it before on the show. But Jill Stein, I want you to see the difference. When Jill Stein talks about the economy, let me tell you what she's going to do. Some of the things. Abolish all student debt for 43 million Americans. Increase and equalize public school funding. End the privatization of public schools. Guarantee free childcare. These are just some of the things. Guarantee lifelong free public education for all institutions of learning, including trade schools, pre-K through college, and graduate school. Everybody see that? Everybody see that? Okay. Again, we're not going to go through everything. I want you to see the difference. When we get to labor, while Kamala Harris didn't even want to put a dollar amount, Jill Stein says when it comes to minimum wage, she will pass a $25 minimum wage. And according to Professor Richard Wolff, I think it's supposed to be at least in the 30s when you adjust for inflation. Kamala won't even give you a dollar amount. You guys see the difference here? Okay. But according to people like Bakari Sellers, Jill Stein is not serious. Okay. We go on to show you here. Guaranteed livable income above poverty. Guarantee housing as a human right. Implement universal rent control. Increase federal support for worker-owned cooperatives. Where Kamala Harris stops at unions, Jill Stein accelerates to worker co-ops. There's so much you can see here. And Eric, you can put the link to this in the chat so that people can see all this stuff, because it's a lot. This is a big one too. Ban at-will employment by requiring just cause to terminate employment. Unionize all federal employees. When we get to housing, end homelessness and housing insecurity with the homes guarantee. Did you guys notice that on Kamala Harris's platform, she didn't even mention a federal jobs guarantee? That's an easy one. That's a gimme. Okay, more here. Nationally adopt housing first policies or practices here. Eliminate credit checks from rental applications. Implement universal rent control and prohibition on excessive rental deposits. I mean, these are the kind of things that are common sense. Expand HUD and U.S. Department of Agriculture. Let's get to healthcare. I'm trying to show you who the real left candidate is. Immediately implement National Improved Medicare for All as a precursor to establishing a UK-style national healthcare service. And this country has so much money, so much money. They're giving billions to Israel every year. They're giving billions to Ukraine, but they won't give everyone in this country health care. I don't want to hear how you're going to pay for it, because none of those politicians in the Pentagon don't have to sit down and give you a list of how they're going to pay to send money to Ukraine, okay? Think about that. These are the things you could have. Cancel all medical debts. Advance reproductive rights and codify Roe v. Wade. All these types of things people need to see. Again, we're fast forwarding so we can make sure we get to the protest and then the debate here. But long, extensive stuff. She has a long, extensive details here when it comes to the pandemic and how to prepare for the next one. Things like that. Kamala not even talking about that. What is happening? When it comes to democracy, she says here, replace the exclusionary two corporate party system with an inclusive multi-party democracy through ranked choice voting and proportional representation. Implement ranked choice voting. I mean, these are things like our allies have. The UK has this. It just, we're going to school tonight. We're going to school. Abolish the Electoral College. Common sense. Common sense. Pass automatic voter registration nationwide. Eliminate all these loopholes, fam. Eliminate all these loopholes. Prisons and policing. Ban private prisons and detention centers. Abolish the death penalty. End mass incarceration and build a system centered on restorative justice. Norway has that. Things like this, So now we're going to go to social justice. And this is another thing. I told you Kamala Harris has no Black agenda. She ain't really got an agenda for an indigenous people too, but Jill does. So she says here, when it comes to the indigenous population, honor all existing treaties with indigenous nations, ensure free, prior, and informed consent for any and all activity on tribal sovereign land, which would mean not putting pipelines on indigenous sovereign land. Tim Waltz. We going all in tonight. Going all in. Establish a federal land back commission. Okay, those are some of the things for the indigenous community. And then when we get to Black Americans, reparations and the agenda to facilitate Black liberation. Kamala Harris is out there running on being a Black woman. Everybody's getting mad because people say by definition she's not a Black American. But this woman has no agenda for Black Americans, not one. Okay, so let's see what Jill has. She explains what reparations is. She talks about what the studies show. We don't need another study. We don't need any further debate on whether reparations should be paid. Makes it very clear. I'm gonna read some of these, not all. Direct all federal agencies to consider and include race and ethnicity as part of all initiatives and other programs implemented with federal dollars. Overturn the harmful Alexander v. Sandoval Supreme Court decision that currently increases the burden for or eliminates private right of action against entities that violate Title VI and other mandates contained in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Kamala does not mention this. Listen to this. Promulgate a moratorium on all proposed cop cities and in federal investments in such facilities. Kamala Harris wants to give more money to the police, and so does Donald Trump. Showing you the difference between these. On here, this one's a big one. Establish a multi-agency federal returning citizens task force to assist and provide resources for the formerly incarcerated in an effort to expedite their journey back to full citizen status, including but not limited to immediate restoration of voting rights in most cases. These things need to happen. Increased investments in programs that support Black-owned businesses. Increase investment in HBCUs and leverage the power of the federal government to force states to compensate, run, land grant HBCUs the more than the $13 billion they are owed. So you can see the difference. Now, I'm going to go to foreign policy because I don't think I got to that one yet. Kamala Harris is out here running like a hawk when it comes to foreign policy. So let's get to peace. And I want to show you what she says here. Establish a foreign policy based on diplomacy, international law, and human rights. End existing wars, military actions, proxy wars, and secret wars. Cut military spending by 50 to 75% and ensure that there's a just transition that replaces military jobs with green new jobs. Let's fast forward to Israel. Immediately end all military aid to Israel and adopt sanctions until Israel complies with international law to put an end to decades of violence, illegal occupation, displacement, dispossession, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. Even up here, another one about Israel. Demand an immediate ceasefire in Israel and Palestine and end to the blockade of Gaza, immediate humanitarian medical relief and release of hostages and political prisoners. Notice when Kamala Harris brought up Israel, she didn't say a damn thing about making Israel end the blockade. Kamala Harris is a candidate in an empty suit. Even Jill Stein last night, when she was pressed by Piers Morgan, took him to task.
Jill, if you got an endorsement from Dick Cheney or the Ku Klux Klan or Vladimir Putin, a public endorsement, what would your reaction be?
I would publicly reject it, but let me say, I think more important than the endorsement is the fact that the policies of Dick Cheney, you know, his neocon approach to our foreign policy, his endless war machine, you know, his very hostile, you know, it's like fight first and ask questions later. I think that's the core of the problem right here, is that the Democrats have very much adopted the agenda of Dick Cheney and the Republican war machine. That is the more critical problem here than the endorsements. But yes, absolutely, I would certainly reject those endorsements.
I mean, we've got a picture.
But the real problem here is that the Democrats have really adopted the policies of the Republicans.
I want to show a
in
picture.
so many ways.
This is of you with a world leader. Let's take a look. It's you sitting at a table with Vladimir Putin. So if Vladimir Putin offered you an endorsement, what would you say?
I would absolutely reject it. And I was there actually at a conference in order to challenge Vladimir Putin. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to talk with him because he sat at that table for about 10 minutes before he gave a speech in Russian. There were no introductions. There were no exchanges whatsoever, no conversations. The one person I could talk with was a former German foreign minister who is sitting to my right, Willy Wimmer. But otherwise, I was not able to talk to any of the dignitaries. The guy on my left, I thought was just Putin's bodyguard. It turned out he was like his press, his chief of press or something on that. But there were absolutely no introductions. And by the way, the Senate Intelligence Committee investigated in detail whether there were any connections between myself, my campaign, and the Russian government, et cetera, and gave me a full exoneration and thanked me for my full cooperation.
Okay.
So unfortunately, that photo is used as part of the Democrats' arsenal of trying to silence their competitors.
Okay, well, you give
Over and over again, they keep using that, but they never put up the picture of Hillary Clinton sitting right next to Vladimir Putin having a conversation with them. Again, just another way to stop Jill Stein. Jill is making waves. She is actually, or was at the Breakfast Club earlier today. So she posted this behind the scenes at the Breakfast Club, and you'll see there's Jill there. There's Charlemagne the God. So she is making the rounds, which is really great. I also want to show this as well. Quick update on a poll. A new swing state poll by Cato of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania is live, surveying a wide range of foreign policy issues. Short breakdown about the Middle East. And this is the one I want to show you here. An overwhelming majority in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan support an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Wisconsin is 80%, Pennsylvania 75%, Michigan 74%. Partisan breakdown. You can see here in Wisconsin, Republicans and Democrats and independents support it. More Democrats than Republicans. But don't you guys see what's happening here? You have Democrats, Republicans, and independents supporting, the majority supporting a ceasefire immediately in Gaza.